Gotta love the Kings. Gotta love this team. Lose to the Wizards and then win 3 games in 4 nights, starting in Charlotte. Obviously not that big of a deal, but then a back-to-back against Cleveland and against the Pistons without any wing defense. These games are going to convince this organization further that you don't need any wing defense. This organization has been trying to build teams without any wing defenders for 3 years straight now. And this is just going to convince them that you really don't need it. No Keegan Murray, no Jake LaRavia. Keon Ellis was questionable coming into this game. Malik Monk leaves this game early in the first half. The Kings were down 18 in the first half of this game and somehow come away with the 127-117 win. And obviously Zach LaVine was incredible. DeMar DeRozan was incredible. Domantas Sabonis had a triple-double. But I mean, the real thing that I look at from this game that amazes me is how they allowed 72 points in the first half, and in the second half they allowed 45 points. Again, without any wing defense, you have Keon Ellis trying to guard Cade Cunningham, you have Devin Carter trying to guard Cade Cunningham, you have everyone trying to guard Cade Cunningham. Like I said, the second night of a back-to-back, you played your starters 40 plus minutes. Every single starter last night played 40 plus minutes. They just looked slow in the first half, right? They weren't the first to loose balls. They weren't getting physical. They only forced 1 turnover in the entire first half against the Pistons. And so it just seemed like it wasn't going to happen on the second night of a back-to-back. Felt like we were too gassed, plus also the injuries hampering our defense, especially in defending a guy like Cade Cunningham. It's like maybe the reason we only got away with it against the Cavs is because the Cavs don't have that bigger player that's going to exploit our defense, right? They have Donovan Mitchell, who's strong, but Cade Cunningham is a tall, big, strong player that we have nobody who can guard him. And so it looked like we just weren't going to be able to get enough stops to win this game. But the physicality increased in that second half. They started forcing turnovers. And then, of course, Zach LaVine goes off. DeMar DeRozan goes off. The Pistons stayed close at the start of the fourth quarter. When Zach LaVine was hitting 3 after 3 after 3, the Pistons kept it close. Asar Thompson hit a corner 3. Cade Cunningham had like 11 points early in the fourth quarter. So they were keeping it close. They were staying in the game. And so I was thinking, well, the second Zach LaVine cools off, or the second they figure out how to defend him, the Pistons are going to retake the lead. And I mean, there was a little bit of a period where our offense cooled off because the Pistons ramped up the pressure and we weren't able to get the ball to LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan was stuck out in the perimeter and the shot clock was winding down on multiple possessions in a row. But again, it was the defense that stepped up for the Kings and was able to get enough stops so that we could then figure out what we were doing offensively. And so maybe this team is heating up at the right time. Maybe. The most encouraging sign is what Zach LaVine is doing. And the question is it sustainable? And when I say is it sustainable, I don't mean can he score 35 plus points every night? Can he go 8 for 11 from 3 and score 43 points every game and play 45 minutes? Actually, what I mean is, can he sustain what he did through the first 2.5 quarters before he went on that 3-point shooting barrage? Because we know he can heat up from 3 like that. Like, we know that. But there was a point in this game where he was just 2 for 4 from 3 in that third quarter. Hadn't taken that many. The shooting splits didn't look all that great, but he was still making a positive impact on this game. And so is that part sustainable? Or is this just one of Zach LaVine's hot runs that he goes on? Because he can be a streaky player, and when he gets hot, he gets hot. And so is his next game, is he going to just disappear? And I think that the reason that we can kind of be encouraged that maybe that won't happen is because he's seemingly learning how to play off Sabonis. And we're actually seeing that dribble handoff partnership develop, especially in these last 2 games against good teams in Cleveland and against Detroit. And we've just been seeing a lot of dribble handoff between Sabonis and between LaVine. No more of this LaVine sitting on the ball for too long and being indecisive. We're seeing him be decisive and learn how to use these Sabonis screens and score more where it feels like it's within the flow of the offense. And so if that truly is the case, if that's truly what we're seeing and that is sustainable, then this team could definitely make a run in the play-in and make it to the playoffs. To start this game out, neither team could miss. Neither team was playing too much defense out there. For the Kings defensively, it was pretty frustrating to watch just because the Kings went to drop coverage against Cade, and Cade would just come around these screens on both sides of the court, coming around to the baseline, walk into these free mid-rangers. He did that 3 times very early on. And that Cade versus Keon Ellis matchup was tough, and Cade would come around these Duren screens. And like I said, Sabonis would be in the drop, and it would just, it opened up a lot for him. And that opened things up for Duren inside. And then outside of just Cade, who was obviously the main problem because we didn't have a big physical defender that we could put on him, it was the Pistons being able to push in transition. And mainly them attacking DeMar DeRozan. Asar Thompson had a very good game attacking DeMar in transition. And then eventually when Malik Monk came in, then Tim Hardaway Jr. started to attack Malik Monk, and he had a quick 11 points. And so the Pistons were doing a very good job of attacking the weaker defenders. And they were also doing a very good job of initiating their action super deep. So they would come around these screens and already be in the mid-range and just be able to rise up for these easy shots or get downhill. So they were playing 2v1 against Sabonis or Valanciunas, whoever it was, as the center. And both Sabonis and Valanciunas aren't the type of centers that are going to be able to take away these 2v1 situations. And so the Pistons were dominating offensively, but luckily the Kings also were playing well offensively. LaVine came out aggressively, hit a step back 3, had a nice cut where Domas found him. And then DeMar was also aggressive, and he was attacking and getting to the free throw line. He got the Pistons up in the air a million times with his pump fake. Got to the free throw line 10 times alone in the first half. Didn't get to the free throw line again in the second half, so they learned after the first half, but they just kept biting on those pump fakes. Trey Lyles hit an early 3. Domantas Sabonis got it going inside. He had like 4 takes to the rim, just going left and making some pretty tough finishes with his left hand over Jalen Duren. And so both teams were going back and forth scoring. LaVine came around, a Sabonis DHO in transition and hit a 3 as Cade went under. But Tim Hardaway Jr. got a transition 3 as LaVine was late to close. But the main difference at that point was the turnovers. It was 4 turnovers to 0. Both DeMar and Sabonis at separate points just pretty much gave the ball to Asar Thompson. And the Pistons were capitalizing on those mistakes. And so that was the big difference. But then Cade Cunningham went out, Jalen Duren went out, and that meant that the Pistons were a lot smaller. Isaiah Stewart at the center, they don't have this big Cade Cunningham to take advantage of offensively. And coming into this game, Jalen Duren was questionable. And so in my preview of this game, I said, if Jalen Duren is out, you got to just dominate the offensive glass. And so while he wasn't out, when he was out of the game, right away he went out of the game, Valanciunas comes in matching up with Isaiah Stewart, and Valanciunas just started dominating the glass. He was doing it on both ends, but he was just dominating beef stew underneath. And the Kings were able to go on a run. Valanciunas getting a putback inside, DeMar hitting a midi. And so we had a lineup of Malik Monk, Devin Carter, DeMar DeRozan, Isaac Jones, and Jonas Valanciunas. And so we've seen that lineup before. We saw it last game, and it didn't look all that great offensively, but this time we were just dominating the interior because it's not a lineup that has that great of spacing. But then Malik Monk got injured, so Zach LaVine came in, and that unit continued to go on a run. Zach LaVine had a great take for an and one inside that tied the game at 32. And so I love the way that Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Jonas Valanciunas were all taking advantage of just the smaller bench that the Pistons had compared to their starting lineup. Jonas Valanciunas in that first quarter, 6 points, 9 rebounds, 5 offensive rebounds. Zach LaVine had 11 points, DeMar had 10 points, and the Kings won the first quarter 17-5, the rebounding battle. And they were able to take a 1-point lead, 38-37 into the second quarter. I liked when Devin Carter came in, his full court pressure. That's something he always does, right? He was just pressing. He did foul Dennis Schroeder at like half court. And so there have been times recently where like it's too much and the Pistons were in the penalty. And so I like the physicality. I like the pressing, but he definitely has to be careful about not fouling. And to his credit, after that, he only had one more foul and he was guarding Cade quite a bit. So that's pretty good. And so he kind of learned from that one moment of fouling Schroeder when they're in the penalty at half court. But I like him coming out and pressing. The second quarter is kind of where things fell apart a bit for the Kings, and it felt like maybe the legs were getting to them from the night before, and it's why what they did in the second half was so surprising, because it felt like they should only be getting more tired as the game goes on, but nope. But turnovers were still a problem, like Valanciunas just threw one away over the top and then fouled Ron Holland to kind of make things even worse for an and one. And because the Pistons had been just so dominant, coming around these screens, getting into the paint so easily, the Kings went to a zone defense. And right away, Malik Beasley's just able to get wide open for a three. And then, like the next possession, Valanciunas is parked down in the paint and in kind of semi-transition, and Isaiah Stewart just walks up for a wide open three. So very quickly, we went out of that zone. The Pistons started to get offensive rebounds, and we're just getting very open three-point looks. I felt like the Kings could have done a better job of fighting over screens. There were too many times where they were, coming over these screens, but they were just way too late. And by the time they finally got over them, the Pistons were already playing a 2-on-1 at the rim. And so it really exposed Sabonis. It really exposed Valanciunas. Also, DeMar's perimeter defense was pretty bad, and the Kings were just letting guys by them in transition to get to the rim. The Pistons were living at the rim. Trey Lyles was getting matched up on Marcus Sasser, which, that foot speed matchup maybe doesn't favor Trey Lyles so much. So Marcus Sasser was taking advantage of that. And it just felt like the Pistons were quicker to the loose balls on these rebounds. They were missing some threes, but they just kept hitting right off the front of the rim and having these long rebounds go out to Pistons. We did get DeMar getting an and one that the Pistons tried to challenge, and they did that unsuccessfully. And then we got some Doug McDermott minutes, which was interesting. I was just like, no. Malik Monk was announced that he was out and he wasn't going to return. So Doug McDermott's coming in. Like, why? I would rather have Markelle Fultz. I'd rather have Jay Crowder. Guys that are going to defend. I don't know how much Jay Crowder has in the tank. Probably not a lot. But just him, he should go out there and fight Isaiah Stewart. I don't know. So, we got 3 minutes of Doug McDermott. He got a rebound. That was his only stat. But the Kings just turned it over a lot. Sabonis was fighting for his life inside as he was constantly like 2-on-1, 3-on-1 inside. Felt like Keon got beat quite a bit off the dribble, and everyone was getting beat off the dribble. And that's when DeMar really picked it up. I mean, he had 22 first half points, so he kind of had it going the entire way, but especially towards the end of the second quarter, that's when he saved us. He drew a 3-point shooting foul on Asar Thompson with 1 second on the shot clock. Just kept hitting shot after shot after shot. Sabonis had a couple of nice finishes going left and going high off glass. And we had Devin Carter in there instead of Trey Lyles. So the starting lineup minus Trey Lyles plus Devin Carter. Devin Carter trying to guard Cade Cunningham. Right? Devin Carter was our wing defender this game, even though he's like 6'3". He was our wing defender. He is a lot stronger than Keon. And Cade did get an and one on him. I don't know how that was a foul, but obviously it was a tough matchup. But he was doing his best. Him and Keon were both fighting, and Devin Carter kept trying to draw offensive fouls, both on Cade and otherwise. And he was going down so easily. And I was like, stop. Like, you need to stop. After the first, 5 times, stop going down so easily. They're obviously not calling it. I thought it was a miracle he didn't get called for a flop. When you keep going down time after time after time, I was so surprised they didn't call him for a flop at some point. But he was obviously, overmatched in terms of size, so he was trying to draw fouls and hold his ground. But it was a good end to the half, right? They got some stops. DeMar was lighting them up, cut the deficit to 10 after it was 18. In that first half, DeMar had 22, 8 for 10 from the free throw line. The Kings led second chance points 13-7. Sabonis had 12 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. But the big thing was the Pistons. It was 8-1 in terms of turnovers, the 8 being the Kings' turnovers. And the points off of those turnovers, 16-0 for the Pistons. And so I thought it was a great fight for the Kings at the end of the first half. But I absolutely did not expect it to continue, because usually on the second night of back-to-back, guys, the legs start to give out in the second half. And so being down 10 already, it's like you'd dug yourself this hole. I felt like it was only going to get worse. But to the Kings' credit, it absolutely did not. I loved the first offensive play for the Kings coming out of halftime. LaVine coming around Sabonis DHO inside the arc and getting downhill and finishing. LaVine was just super aggressive inside. He wasn't taking a lot of threes early in this game. That was later. That was the end of the third. That was the start of the fourth when he caught fire. He was getting inside, attacking, and had some incredible finishes. And then the Kings started to force some turnovers. So one turnover in the entire first half. Keon takes a forearm to the face from Cade. That's an early turnover. Keon stripped Cade at another point, and they just started to force more turnovers. There's one interesting play. After Keon took that forearm to the face, for some reason we decided to have Lyles bring the ball up the floor. Maybe not the best idea, because he immediately got stripped by Cade in the front court. But Lyles did some really nice things. Shout out to Trey Lyles. Like, we have to give Trey Lyles a ton of credit. This was a guy who was getting phased out of the rotation with the additions of Valanciunas and LaRavia, right? He wasn't getting minutes. I mean, Markelle Fultz at times was getting minutes over him. And he's come in, been the starter in 2 straight games, back-to-back days, played 40 minutes, then played 38 minutes, and he's just making winning plays. He had 4 offensive rebounds. At the start of that third quarter, he had a nice offensive rebound and then fed a cutting LaVine for a dunk down the lane, then got another board, drew a foul inside. He did miss both free throws, also missed a wide open 3. You know, the shooting wasn't there, but he was working and making nice plays. DeMar was still cooking. And it was a third quarter with a lot of fouls. I mean, it was just a very physical game. There were a ton of fouls. The Kings shot 27 free throws, and the Pistons shot 28. Jalen Duren had his 4th foul, going after an offensive rebound where he kind of elbowed Sabonis. But the Kings, they were getting it close. They were within 5. And they started to miss some good looks inside, and they were just missing the putbacks, right? They were getting after it on the offensive glass, but they just couldn't quite get it to go down, and it felt like all those missed opportunities were about to bite us. It just felt like one of those moments where we weren't capitalizing on a big moment in the game, and the Pistons were gonna make a big 3 and swing the momentum, but that didn't happen. And instead what happened is a ball went out of bounds. It gets called Pistons ball, and Doug Christie, the challenge beast he is, apparently he won all I almost said all 3, all 2 of them against Cleveland, wins another one here on an out-of-bounds call, and the Kings continued to fight back. DeMar hit a bailout 3, and then it was Devin Carter's time. He came in, and for him, so much of his game is going after loose balls, and so he picked up a loose ball on the offensive end and immediately went into the paint and finished. And so a lot of what he does is just, if he comes up with a loose ball in the right area and scores, then it looks like he has a good game. But on a game where he only gets 7 minutes and he doesn't come up with that loose ball, then it looks like he didn't have as good of a game. But this was one of those games where, I mean, there were a lot of loose balls that he almost came up with, but he did come up with some loose balls. And he's just always playing hard. He had another really nice attack after the first loose ball that he came up with. Then he hit a 3, scored 7 straight points for the Kings, then missed a deep 3. And he is setting up really deep from 3, which is exactly what he has to do because of his release. But that was a massive stretch for Devin Carter to be able to have someone come off the bench, be able to attack the rim, and then also knock down that 3. Sabonis then got a putback, and the Kings were within 2. After the Kings got within 2, they then proceeded to allow like 4 offensive rebounds on 1 possession, which wasn't fun. I was like, somebody other than Valanciunas needs to get down there and rebound this ball, but they kept tapping it back out, eventually hit a 3. But then the Kings answered back and did pretty much the same thing. They got like 3 offensive rebounds. Devin Carter got 1, Lyles got 1, Valanciunas got 1, and then Valanciunas got to the line. And that all came off Zach LaVine driving to the basket and kicking at baseline for a Lyles open corner 3. And so it's just LaVine's aggressiveness attacking the rim. And he had one play where the Pistons just didn't get set defensively, and he just flew past the defense for an and 1. And then he had a couple other really tough finishes, 2 more really tough finishes, then hit a step back 3 to end the quarter up 3. And also in there, Keon got called for, I think it was his 4th foul. Yeah, 4th foul on a back tap. Doug Christie challenges. gets his second challenge, fourth straight challenge, successful. Kings get the ball back. So those two challenges by Doug Christie were huge for the Kings to be able to take a lead into the fourth quarter. And at the start of the fourth quarter, that's of course where LaVine went crazy. He hit 3 straight threes, 16 straight points for the Kings. But it didn't get them that big of a lead, right? We started with a 3-point lead in the fourth quarter. And I think after he hit those threes, I think we had a 4-point lead because Cade had gotten inside for a finish. Asar Thompson hit a corner three. Cade hit another three. And so it felt like we were going to waste it. And then Cade got inside for another and one. So not being able to capitalize on those threes was definitely a worry. But the starters came back in. Immediately, DeMar comes in, hits a midi. And it's like, oh yeah, that guy's also on fire. That's pretty cool. It's like they can deny LaVine the ball all they want, but then DeMar is just going to come over here and knock down a midi. But Cade was going off, matching LaVine. And I thought Lyles came over for a huge help block on Cade. And LaVine was able to come down, hit another three. And then DeMar did something that he did last game as well, where all the attention is on LaVine. And LaVine is kind of in the middle of the court. You know, he's ready to take off and take a screen and get to the 3-point line. And all the attention is there. And DeMar just says, see you later. Drives right by his defender. Feeds Sabonis inside, who then gets fouled. And that's exactly what he did last game as well, where Sabonis was setting a screen for LaVine and DeMar just drives the other way and feeds Lyles inside. And the reason I love that so much is because the Pistons were applying so much pressure to LaVine, denying him the ball. And when DeMar didn't have the ball, they were doing the same for him, right? They were trying to push the Kings back on the perimeter, not let them get into their offense. And that definitely succeeded for a few possessions in a row. We were getting down late into the shot clock. And so I was thinking, you know, Sabonis might have to go himself if DeMar and LaVine are just getting denied so much. But the Kings did something very smart, which was pushing the ball quickly after a miss, not letting the Pistons set up their defense. And DeMar just got down the court really quickly into the post, got super deep. The Kings get it to him quickly, and he's able to hit a midi. And so I liked how the Kings were finding these different ways of scoring around the pressure that the Pistons were applying, push in transition, or, you know, distract with LaVine and drive the other way. And then DeMar just hit a baseline midi coming around to Sabonis DHO. He just couldn't be stopped. Dennis Schroeder missed a couple free throws. And then to try to combat the pressure, the Kings went to something else, right? They had DeMar handling. They would have LaVine and Sabonis come up to set screens. And this was also a super beautiful play where DeMar comes around, he finds Sabonis rolling inside, Sabonis finds Lyles, and Lyles gets the layup. That was the play. That was the play where I was like, oh, we're going to win this, because we've just seen this team not be able to execute down the stretch of games offensively. We've seen too many times where it is just DeMar handling or LaVine handling, and we aren't able to get things going. And so that was the thing that was most encouraging about this game for me, is that they were able to close this game offensively. And we saw them actually go to multiple different looks, because, you know, they went to the double screens, and then they tried to go to it again, and LaVine set a moving screen. So it's like, okay, now we go to something different. And it just felt like they had a lot of different looks to their offense that they could go to. And so now we just need to be able to apply that when LaVine isn't going 8 for 11 from 3, when DeMar is missing sometimes. We need to continue to see, you know, not just isolation basketball. And so there were some very beautiful plays. Keon had a clutch steal down the stretch. DeMar hit another mini. Sabonis got fouled underneath for an and one during that DeMar midi. And so it was, you know, an and one between two different players. That put the Kings up 10 points. Keon got a clutch offensive rebound that really just killed time. And then LaVine put it away, hit a three, hit a midi. Valanciunas and Isaac Jones couldn't believe what they were seeing on the bench. Their reactions were hilarious. And the Kings were able to close it out. Isaiah Stewart had some funny plays down the stretch, throwing Sabonis down inside, setting a really dumb moving screen. Felt like he just got frustrated. But it was a very fun game for the big three of the Kings. Really 2 straight games of all of them putting up massive stat lines. Sabonis had his 50th triple-double as a King. 19 points, 10 assists, 15 rebounds. DeMar had 37 on 14 for 26 from the field. LaVine 8 for 11 from three, 16 for 28 from the field for 43 points and only one turnover. Sabonis only had 2 turnovers. DeMar only had 2 turnovers. After 8 turnovers in the first half, they only had 10 on the game. Detroit had 1 turnover at half. They had 9 on the game, so completely flipped it to 8 turnovers to 2 in the second half. Lyles was battling, like I said, with those 4 offensive rebounds. Chipped in 7 points. Keon guarding Cade for most of the game. That's an impossible matchup. Had 3 steals. Devin Carter also came in for 22 minutes. Chipped in those 7 points. Defended Cade. Valanciunas came in for 13 minutes. And this was a matchup for Valanciunas. He had some battles with Isaiah Stewart inside. That was fun to watch. Some good old post moves. He had 10 points, 12 rebounds. And then Malik left early with 6 minutes. Isaac Jones had 4 minutes. There's just one play that stands out for Isaac Jones, and that was just when he was in the strong side corner on defense guarding Malik Beasley, and he just like takes a step too far back, and Malik Beasley just catches and lets it go. Malik Beasley, second in the league and made 3-pointers, so that's just one of those mistakes where it's like, he just took one step too far. And then Doug McDermott played 3 minutes and didn't really do anything. But this moves the Kings to 39-40. Their magic number for the play-in is 1. So 1 win for the Kings, 1 loss for the Suns. Or 1 loss for the Suns. That's not an and, that's an or. And they will be in. And I have no idea what's going to happen this offseason, I have no idea. Is it a rebuild? Is it a retool? Who's here? Who's not? But I said this after the Cavs game. Like, we can just appreciate having DeMar DeRozan on the team, which is what I was talking about after the Cavs game. Also Zach LaVine and Sabonis and just all these guys. That's the point of the season that I've got to, right? I'm it's like the stages of grief. I'm in acceptance. I went through the denial, right? I went through the not caring, saying I'm done. Now I'm in the acceptance. I've accepted it. I've accepted this team for what it is. Now they put together 3 straight wins. Let's go win the play-in, right? Enjoy the players we got, enjoy the team we got, and whatever happens in the offseason happens. We'll get to that after the season. Next up is the Denver Nuggets at home for a 3-game homestand to end the season, where we have the Nuggets, the Clippers, and the Suns. As of right now, we don't have an update on Malik Monk, but Jake LaRavia started working out, light workouts. Them saying light workouts makes it seem like maybe he won't be back for this Nuggets game, but I don't know. Maybe he will, but it feels like maybe the game after the Nuggets game for LaRavia. No idea about Keegan, no idea about Monk. The Nuggets right now are in a battle, right? They're dropping. They've lost 4 in a row to the Timberwolves, Spurs, Warriors, and Pacers. They're dropping. They're in that crazy part. They could drop to the play-in, which would be insane. They're only a half game up on the play-in teams right now. I'm hoping they don't drop to the play-in, right? Or at least if they do, they win the first play-in game, because, the Kings are going to have to go through one of those play-in teams if they want to make it to the playoffs. I'm hoping it's the Grizzlies personally, right? Beat the Mavs, and then I would like the Grizzlies. But the Kings have gotten beaten all 3 times by the Nuggets this season. All 3 kind of interesting games. There were 2 close games in there. There was a 4th quarter collapse by the Kings. There was almost a 4th quarter collapse by the Nuggets, the Doug McDermott game. Last time it was Westbrook hitting 4 threes. Lately, there's been a lot of bad Westbrook performances, bad Westbrook media lately. But last time we played the Nuggets, we had Keegan guarding Jokic. We had LaRavia guarding Jokic. So what if those guys aren't available? Well, then it's going to be Lyles, which honestly, that's not the worst thing. Like, Lyles can get in there and work, but then who off the bench does it? Jay Crowder, come on down, guard Jokic. Honestly, that'd be fun to see. So if those guys are out, I would assume Lyles gets the matchup initially on Jokic. After that, I have no idea. Probably just Valanciunas. I do wonder if we see the same kind of strategy. Leave Westbrook, have the center guard Westbrook, because he did go 4 for 7 from 3 last time, but do we go play the percentages? He's not going to do that again. Do we sag off Christian Brown again, who went 3 for 6 from 3 last game? That'll be interesting. This is an ESPN game, but it's just going to have to be a pretty insane defensive effort with the guys that are probably out. And then also if Monk is out, We're going to need another big game from Zach LaVine. He played 45 minutes against the Pistons. He played, I think, 40 minutes or 42 against the Cavs. But we've had a couple of close games against the Nuggets. So if we can keep it close again, the main thing that I'm going to be watching for is that execution down the stretch. We've seen the good execution down the stretch for a couple of games now. And so can they continue that? Can they continue to not just rely on ISO ball? Can they get the ball to DeMar deep? Can they get the ball to LaVine in good positions? Can they use those guys as decoys to get Sabonis going downhill and either scoring or playmaking from there? Those are the things that I'm going to be watching for. Hopefully we get to that position in a close game, or we just blow them out. I mean, that's fine too. I'll take that. Anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back on Wednesday to recap that game against the Nuggets, so I will see you guys then. Peace.